Before we dive into this journey of choices and reconnections, if you seek a refuge for your soul and believe that love always deserves a second chance, subscribe to the channel. Join us in this search for meaning. Now, close your eyes for a moment and feel the weight of the silence that precedes great changes. Jenna watched the Manhattan skyline through the immense glass wall of her 40th floor office. Outside, the world was a whirlwind of lights and sirens, but inside that room, the only sound was the sterile hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic, almost hypnotic click of her keyboard. She had everything the young intern who left Ireland 5 years ago had dreamed of: a directorship that commanded respect, an apartment smelling of vanilla and fresh flowers changed weekly, and a diamond ring on her left finger that sparkled under the cold LED lights. Yet, Jenna's silence was a desert. It was a silence she tried to fill with cups of bitter coffee and endless spreadsheets that stretched into the early hours. The smell of success in New York had a metallic taste, dry and impersonal. It was the opposite of the smell of Dublin, that mixture of damp earth, roasted malt, and the salty sea spray that clung to the skin. Jenna had become a master of the art of pretending. When people commented on the fatigue in her eyes, she would smile and say it was just overwork, a badge of honor in the city that never sleeps. But deep down, it was the weight of a soul that had been walking on autopilot for 5 years, disconnected from its own joy. At night, in the luxurious apartment she shared with John, Jenna avoided certain radio frequencies and certain streets that reminded her of European villages. She kept, at the back of a locked drawer of her memory, the echo of Henry's laughter, a laugh that felt like a hug. Their breakup hadn't been caused by betrayal or an explosive fight, it had been a slow, silent erosion. When the irresistible job offer in New York arose, Henry, with hands stained with paint and a heart full of an aching generosity, said the words that sealed their fate. "Go, Jenna. The world is too vast for what you want to build, and I won't be the wall that stops you from seeing the horizon." She left, believing ambition would fill the void. But in leaving, she left behind the only person who knew the exact color of her sadness and the reason for her childhood fears. John, her fiancé, was the personification of security. He was logical, predictable, and offered a love that felt like a well-drafted contract. But when John hugged her after a long day, Jenna felt he was embracing her status and her achievements, not the woman who cried secretly in the shower. Jenna's invisible wound was the awareness of having traded the depth of an ocean for the safety of a shallow pool. She had the world, but she didn't have herself. Brew and Heritage wants to expand. "We need to go to Dublin to close this contract in person," John announced during a dinner where the wine was expensive but the conversation was scarce. Jenna felt her fork tremble against the porcelain, a sharp sound that seemed to echo throughout the room. Dublin. The name of that city sounded like a forbidden song. 5 years later, she was back. As soon as the airport doors opened, the cold, damp Irish air hit her like a punch of pure nostalgia. The smell of rain on ancient asphalt and the distant sound of bagpipes on Grafton Street awakened something in her that had been dormant under layers of pragmatism. John complained constantly about the taxi delays and the gray weather, but Jenna was in a trance, absorbing every detail. While crossing the River Liffey for a meeting, her eyes locked onto a tall figure in a dark wool coat, leaning against the bridge wall. Time didn't just stop, it collapsed. It was Henry. He looked more mature, with a bit of stubble, but his eyes were still the windows to a soul Jenna knew as well as her own home. The reunion was inevitable and painfully formal. John, in his quest for local connections, organized a business dinner at a historic pub that was being restored. And there was Henry, the artist hired to revitalize the ceiling frescoes. The dialogue between them was a minefield of unspoken words. "You seem to have conquered everything you wanted, Jenna," Henry said, with a voice that still held that husky sweetness that used to disarm her. "New York has been generous," she lied, her voice flickering slightly under his attentive gaze. John intervened with comments about profit margins and American efficiency, treating Henry's art as a mere decorative detail. The tension at the table was so thick that Jenna could hardly breathe. She saw Henry notice the excessive shine of her engagement ring, and then seek her eyes, looking for the girl who used to run barefoot through the hills of Howth, laughing at the wind. Pride forced her to keep her posture straight and her chin up, but inside, she felt that every word from John was a nail in a coffin she herself had built for her feelings. That night, the stone walls of the old hotel seemed to suffocate Jenna. The rain beat against the windows with a violence that reflected her internal storm. John, sensing her distance, finally exploded. "You're not here, Jenna. Since we stepped onto this island, you've become a ghost. You're in that pub, with that artist with dirty hands. The truth hurts because it tears off the masks." Jenna didn't answer. She left the room, walking aimlessly through the storm, without a coat or an umbrella. She ended up on the Halfpenny Bridge, the exact spot where, 5 years ago, they had said goodbye with promises they knew they wouldn't keep. There, in the middle of the bridge, Jenna collapsed. Her crying wasn't just for Henry, but for all the times she had said yes, when her heart was screaming no. The title, the status, the luxury apartment. It all felt like a glass structure about to shatter under the weight of the first real truth. She realized she had spent half a decade building a life that was admired by everyone, but that didn't fit inside her chest. She was exhausted from carrying the armor of the successful woman. The sun rose pale over Dublin, bringing a restorative silence. Under her hotel room door, Jenna found a small piece of drawing paper with a handwritten address, Henry's new studio. Upon arriving, she found him in silence, surrounded by canvases that overflowed with colors she didn't see in New York. They didn't talk about business, or John, or the past. Henry simply pointed to an unfinished canvas and said, "Life isn't about what we accumulate in our pockets, Jenna. It's about what we allow to remain in our hearts when everything else is taken away." That morning, Jenna looked at Henry's canvases and saw, in every brushstroke, a trace of herself. He had painted the longing, the hope, and the light she thought she had lost. There, amidst the smell of oil paint and wood, Jenna experienced her epiphany. Forgiving herself for leaving was the only step toward starting over. She didn't need John's financial security to be complete. She needed the courage to be vulnerable again, to be no one in a place where she was loved for who she was, and not for what she had. The decision didn't come like a lightning bolt, but like a tide rising slowly. At the airport, in front of the boarding gate for JFK, Jenna stopped. John already had the passports in hand, checking his watch impatiently. "Jenna, we're going to miss the flight." She looked at him, at the man who represented her secure future, and felt deep compassion but no desire. "I'm not getting on that plane, John." She took off the diamond ring, the symbol of her golden prison, and handed it to him. "You deserve someone who loves you with the same logic that you live by. I only gave you what was left of me, and that's unfair to both of us." It was a goodbye bathed in a painful but liberating honesty. She watched the plane take off, carrying away the expectations of others and the life she thought she should have. With only a small suitcase and a heart beating with a strength she hadn't felt in years, Jenna took a bus back to the heart of Dublin. The fear of the unknown was immense, but the freedom to breathe without masks was the sweetest sensation she had ever tasted. The following months were an exercise in humility and patience. Jenna didn't run immediately into Henry's arms. She knew she needed to find herself before giving herself away. She rented a simple cottage near the coast and began consulting for small local artisans and producers, using her talent to help people who loved what they did. She traded high heels for hiking boots and boardroom meetings for conversations around fireplaces. Slowly, she and Henry began to rediscover each other. They were no longer naive interns, but adults carrying scars and wisdom. They walked along the dark sand beaches, talking about how time is the best sculptor of the soul. Jenna learned that true love is not an anchor that holds you to the pier for fear of the storm, but a steady wind that encourages you to sail toward where your essence feels at home. She was rebuilding her foundation, brick by brick, upon the rock of truth. Exactly 1 year after her decision to stay, Jenna was walking the cliffs of Howth at sunset. The sky was a painting of violet and orange, and the wind blew with the scent of fulfilled promises. She no longer had the director position in Manhattan, and her bank account was a fraction of what it used to be, but her wealth was measured by the peace she felt when she closed her eyes. She was no longer a stranger in her own life. She found Henry sitting on the hilltop, watching the sea. He didn't need to say anything, he just reached out his hand, and she held it with the firmness of someone who knows they are exactly where they should be. The sun setting on the Irish horizon didn't just mark the end of a day, but the beginning of a new era of authenticity. Jenna understood that her journey wasn't about choosing between two men or two countries, but about the courage to choose herself and the truth of her heart. Starting over is not a mistake corrected, but an evolution celebrated. In the end, love always finds its way home when the doors of the soul are finally open. Narrator: sometimes, life takes away everything we think we want, just to give us space to receive what we truly need. Jenna's story teaches us that success without peace is just another form of solitude. If these words found a place in your heart today, if you felt this story was the sign you were waiting for, subscribe to the channel and share your experience in the comments. Have you ever felt you needed to abandon a secure life to find your real life? Share this video with someone who feels trapped in a heavy silence today. Remind them that it's never too late to get off the plane and come home, to the home that exists within us. Stay in the light, and remember, your next chapter begins the moment you decide to be true to yourself. Until next time.